disruptive.
America that I fought.
Weird thing to happen. Hello, one and all. Welcome to this edition of Kitz Corner. It's been a fantastic day so far. So the war machine is so desperate to keep the money flow into Ukraine. So desperate that it can't take any more Antony Blinken or Jake Sullivan or anyone else in the State Department. They had to go to the bottom of the brink. They had to drag Victoria Nuland, the architect herself, that initiated the 2014 Maidan coup that overthrew the Ukrainian government and basically propelled us into this war. They had to drag her onto the CNN interview. They had to go to the bottom of the brink, down to the disclosed underground cavern that she haunts in the State Department, and drag her to the interview to plead with people, please, please, please stick with Ukraine. Because it wasn't just Zelensky doing a telethon act. It was also, Antony Blinken, Jake Sullivan, Anderson Cooper, Jake Tapper. Many news anchors have been trying to present you, trying to manipulate you, trying to beg and plead with you. Please, please, just hang with us. Eventually, some point, the hundreds of millions of thousands that we have slaughtered in Ukraine for this pointless war will come to pass. Please. Please hang in there. It reminds me of when Jeb Bush ran for president in 2016 and he told people, please clap for me. Please clap for me. I know I'm the pointless brother, but please clap. So here's Victoria Nuland on the CNN interview. Looks like about to prize her role as the next supervillain in Aquaman 3. Judging by the lighting and the atmosphere that's around her. I'm sorry. It just looks like, I don't know if it's the blue and green mixed together, but she looks like one of those predator fishes that you see walking down an aquarium, like just stalking you like, I'm ready. I'm going to come down and get you. Only I'm not in this glass bubble. But here she is, dragged from her covenant meeting to discuss with you why we still need to focus on Ukraine. Why all the billions and billions of dollars we still need to keep funding and drain your country to fund this pointless war. Here she is.
It is, and I do hear you and the others in the administration and supporters talking about the vital necessity to do this. But as people say, hope is not a strategy. And do you have any actual belief or reason to believe that eventually this bill will be paid? And if not, how are you going to make sure Ukraine gets vital weapons and ammunition?
I love how she threw in the hope is not a strategy. That little phrase there in the middle of her question there. From Anna Mapour, that's the anchor, CNN International, or whatever this is from. Hope may not be a strategy, but you know what is a strategy? Saying this is for democracy. Saying this is for a humanitarian cause. Saying that Vladimir Putin is the ultimate psychopath and that's why we got to stop him. That is strategies. Those are strategies to manipulate you, to make you believe how vital this war is. Just like they did with Afghanistan, just like they did with Syria, just like they did with Libya, just like they did with Yemen, just like they do with every single war. Every single war they develop and create. They need the strategic planning to manipulate you, to sell you the idea that this war is so important, that we got to send your money, send your kids off to this pointless war because of blank, because of this, because of that. They have to make up marketing terms. That's why they tell you it's about democracy. It's about defending the people there. It's about this horrible regime that's oppressing people. Even though we're the ones being repressed by our regime, and nobody really cares about that. We're not highlighting the oppressive regime that we're dealing with, but we got to focus on other countries. Again, to sell you the idea of war. Because in order to have a business of war on terror, we have to manufacture the war on terror. We have to sell you the idea. So here's Victoria Nuland exactly doing that.
Christian, I have strong confidence that when the House comes back, after they've been out in their districts, hearing from the American people, after they have heard from Ukraine, they have heard from Europe, which, by the way, just passed $54 billion in additional aid itself, that we will.
So she starts off by saying, I have high hopes that once our American politicians get back from their district, listening to the American people, but then talk to Ukrainian people, I'm sure this is going to come to pass. Okay, let's say for a second that representatives actually go to their districts and talk to the people that they represent. Let's imagine that actually happens. Do you think the American public, like where in the American public, are they going to put every other crisis down? You know, from inflation to high cost of rent to the cost of living to gas prices, to affordability, like the border crisis. Putting all these crises down to be like, you know what? I think the most important thing right now is to continue siphoning our country, siphoning all the resources and financial equity from our country, and send it off to a corrupt nation in East Europe. Like, where in the American public sphere are you going to find people that are going to be applauding that we need to send more money after the billions and billions of dollars wasted on this regime, wasted on this war, wasted on this manufactured stunt? Where in the American public are they going to be like, yeah, you know what? Cost of living, I can't afford groceries, I might be homeless, and there's crisis after crisis, and everything's falling apart, but definitely we got to send it off to a bunch of corrupt neo-Nazis in Ukraine to fight this imaginative war. Like, where are you going to find those people?
We'll do what we have always done, which is defend democracy and freedom around the world, not just for victims.
There's the strategy. We got to defend democracy and freedom around the world, as opposed to us. As opposed to putting a hit job on our political opponents during an election year. Again, we don't even defend our democracies here. We don't defend our democracies. We don't have healthy election cycles. But it's our due diligence. It's our diligence to go around the world and protect other countries with their democracies. Tell them how to do their elections properly. Like, it doesn't take rocket science. It doesn't take a math genius to figure out how manipulative, how insulting, how degrading this all is. How you're being used and pawned for endless war by this corrupted regime. Victoria Nuland does not give a crap about defending anybody. I tell you, in the past 20 plus years of the war on terror, what have we defended? What have we defended? Other than oil, other than natural reserves, other than capitalizing off the death and suffering of innocent lives countlessly around the world. What have we defended? In fact, we turn democracies into dictatorships. We have a long history about that, but they'll never tell you that. That's something you got to learn elsewhere, but you can't do your own research, apparently.
Victims of tyrants like Putin, but in our own interest in preserving a free and open international order. That's what we need to do. We've done it before. And by the way, we have to remember that the bulk of this money is going right back into the U.S. economy to make those weapons, including good-paying jobs in some 40 states across the United States.
So there's the kicker. There's the kicker. Don't worry, because this investment is going to come back to you with jobs. So her big strategy is to sell you the idea that, you know, in order to have jobs in America, sustainable jobs, we need to kill people. Like, that's the economic system that America praises so much. It's exactly what Wolf Blitzer said years ago. Wolf Blitzer announced on the air when he was talking to Rand Paul about, you know, cutting back on the military spending. And Wolf Blitzer announced on air, well, what about the jobs? What about the economy? We have such a huge high economic stance when it comes to the bloodshed regime. When it comes to killing people. How are we going to stop that? We can't. Wow. I mean, anyone who remembers the past 20 years, not even that, maybe the past 10 years or 5 years How many times have they gotten these people to go on television and tell you this gobbledygook, to sell you the idea that we have to send money, your retirement, your savings, your expenditures, your investments, we got to send it off to the military-industrial complex so we can go to another country, slaughter their people, take their resources, and it's going to come back to you. When has that ever happened? When has that ever happened? We spent trillions of dollars in Afghanistan. Did anyone see a dime out of that? Was that a good investment? No. In fact, it was a terrible investment because we got the Taliban to rise up again. I thought we were supposed to be stopping terror. Well, it turns out you need more terror to have more war on terror. So, hey, the Taliban uprising Afghanistan probably was the end goal. Wow. It's also funny to note that when she said that this is about our interests, you ever notice that like clever wordplay, like it's about our interests? It's about keeping international world order. Like, it's not about your interests. It's not about the American people's interests. It's about our interests, meaning her, meaning the State Department, meaning the CIA, meaning the intelligence community, meaning the military-industrial contract. It's not interest of you, because the American people are suffering because of this. The American public are getting their finances suffocated. They're cutting back on services, and they're cutting back on investments here back at home. That's why we have crumbling healthcare. That's why there's crumbling infrastructure. They're siphoning the countries. They're siphoning all the NATO-aligned countries to advance this outrageous warfare that they know that they're losing. They know that they're losing. Why else would they have to do these stupid appearances? Why else would they have to beg to people? If they know that they're losing. So, here's someone that actually knows a thing or two about what's going on. Here's Robert F. Kennedy Jr., who has spoken highly about the Ukraine war, and I totally 100% agree on his stances, because he gave people countless interviews on podcasts and independent media, because he's never going to be allowed to say this on regular media, but he's done countless interviews explaining to people how we got into this mess. And that's the thing, that's the big thing. Take away from the Ukraine-Russia war or Israel-Palestine or any of these wars, is you're not being told the before story. You're just being told that there's war breaking out and we got to go and fight. But no one's telling you how this war broke out, why they're fighting, why the high tensions, why does this matter, why these two specific areas. No one tells you any of that. But here's RFK Jr. about to break it down.
This is a war that should have never happened. It's a war that Russians tried repeatedly to settle on terms that were very, very beneficial to Ukraine and us. The major thing they wanted was for us to keep NATO out of the Ukraine. The big military contractors want to add new countries to NATO all the time. Why? Because then that country has to conform its military purchases to NATO weapon specifications, which means certain companies, Northrop Grumman, Raytheon, General Dynamics, Boeing, and Lockheed, get a trapped market. In March of 2022, we committed $113 billion. Just to give you an example, we could have built a home for almost every homeless person in this country. We then committed another $24 billion since then, 2 months ago, and now President Biden's asking for another $60 billion. But the big, big expenses are going to come after the war, when we have to rebuild all the things that we destroyed. Mitch McConnell was asked, can we really afford to spend $113 billion to Ukraine? He said, don't worry. It's not really going to Ukraine.
It's going to American defense manufacturers.
So he just admitted it's a money laundering scheme. And who do you think owns every one of those companies? BlackRock. So Tim Scott, during the Republican debate, said, don't worry, it's not a gift to Ukraine, it's a loan. So raise your hand if you think that that loan's ever getting paid back. Yeah, of course it's not. So why do they call it a loan? is if they call it a loan, they can impose loan conditions. And what are the loan conditions that we impose on them? Number one, an extreme austerity program, so that if you're poor in Ukraine, you're going to be poor forever. Number two, most important, Ukraine has to put all of its government-owned assets up for sale to multinational corporations, including all of its agricultural land, the biggest single asset in Europe. In Ukraine, there's been 1,000 years of war fought over that land. It's the richest farmland in the world. It's the breadbasket of Europe. 500,000 kids almost, Ukrainian kids, have died to keep that land as part of Ukraine. They almost certainly didn't know about this loan condition. They've already sold 30% of it. The buyers were DuPont, Cargill, and Monsanto. Who do you think owns all of those companies? Yeah, BlackRock. And then in December, President Biden gave out the contract to rebuild Ukraine. And who do you think got that contract? BlackRock. So they're doing this right in front of us. They don't even care that we know anymore, because they know that they can get away with it. And how do they know that? Because they have a strategy. And that strategy is an old strategy, which is they keep us at war with each other. They keep us hating on each other. They keep the Republicans and Democrats fighting each other, black against white, and all these divisions that they sow.
That, my friends, is something you would never hear on television, because that is the honest truth. That is the deep, detailed description of why these wars exist. Why exactly Ukraine and Russia are at heightened tensions, that they are killing each other. Why exactly Israel and Palestine are at war. Why exactly are we going and having troops in Syria and Afghanistan and Iraq and Iran and Latin American countries? Because it's all about capital. It's always, always, always about global capital. Any of the stuff you hear on television about humanitarian causes or defending democracy or, impunitive liberation of countries, that is complete bullcrap. That is from a marketing term that they use in think tanks to make you believe that, because they have to sell you the idea of war. That's why they're so desperate they had to have Victoria Nuland, who started this war to begin with, constantly sell you the idea that this is important because, God forbid, we have to worry about the jobs. Because there is a huge economical stance when it comes to killing and slaughtering people. We have an evil death cult economic system in the West here. And this is it playing in full speed with all these different nations. And people are just getting manipulated. They are getting brainwashed. They are getting scapegoated. They're getting paranoid. They're getting fear-mongered to slaughter each other. And they don't even know why. They're just doing it because BlackRock and Vanguard and State Street and military contractors and BP and Shell and big oil regimes and big tech companies and all these multi-international corporations and government contractors gathered together to say we need to manipulate people, so they constantly keep fighting. They constantly keep butting heads, that we, the criminals, can extract our evil doing and get away with it. That is why we're doing this. It is a complete, utter money transfer. It's a money sucking of all these countries and pouring into this corrupted nation, not for the benefit of Ukraine, not for the benefit of the war, but for the benefit of these contractors that have already been capitalizing off this war since day one. And the ones that manufactured this war, again, to keep us at war so they can capitalize off war on terror. They have to fear-monger you as much as possible so they can capitalize and sell you more terror. So you're in constant fear, and then you're fighting each other, and that's how wars begin, ladies and gentlemen. It starts from the top down, and the more people that realize this, the more maybe we can actually stop these wars and come to some sort of peace agreement. But they hate that idea. They hate that idea so much that they will silence people who are the truth seekers. They will silence people who are investigative journalists. They will silence people like Julian Assange because he reported exactly the manufacture, the blueprints of how these wars begin and how corrupted this goes, how far wide the global war machine really impacts us. So thank you to RFK for explaining that. And for Victoria Nuland, you can go back to The Little Mermaid and go back to your underwater hellhole, friggin' Ursula. She definitely looks like a supervillain underwater, just with the lighting and everything. Ugh.